Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 270 and we have a good one for you today. I do apologize as this video is coming out a little bit late. I am on a project in Arkansas that has been physically demanding. So the Fish Friday wasn't going to happen. I am up very early recording this, which is why you'll probably see me up drink some coffee every now and then. Um, But I thought this would be a good chance to sort of talk about um, the type specimens that I alluded to, and that was officially requested by Murmur Wag. Um, so we might be a little bit shorter video, but I figured it'd be a good deal and a good way to kind of teach everyone about type specimens. Um, because I mean, let's just get right into it. So, every little living specimen, everything living has a place on the tree of life, a position that's been given to it by scientists, defined by names. That is what these scientists use to organize and communicate about biodiversity, about species, and things like that. And it's progressed significantly over the course of the years. We've talked about the evolution of taxonomy, but you know, and it has been progressed because before it was there, before taxonomic rules came into play, it was, haphazard. There was a lot of confusion. But what a lot of people don't realize, even maybe necessarily after that video, is that every level behind every name, and I know we were talking about type specimen, which would be like what you would use for a species, but behind every name, there is an anchor, a type, essentially, that gives that name its actual meaning. So, anytime I talk about a family, anytime I talk about a genus, even every time I talk about a species, there is a type behind that named word that is essentially giving it meaning. And it'll make a little more sense when I talk about it. So, let's kind of start at the family level. So, at the top of the, level we're going to start is family. And a family isn't defined by a specimen or an individual animal. It's going to be defined by a genus. It's going to be called the type genus. And I'm just going to use the Texas cichlid that we did last week as a recent example. For example, the family Cichlidae, that is defined and it's anchored to its type genus Cichla. And that means that no matter how scientists come in, rearrange, redefine cichlids, the Cichlidae must always contain Cichla, that family, that genus. So essentially, that genus holds the keys to the entire family's identity. Essentially, all of the species of Cichlidae in the world are based on the genus Cichla, meaning that they're more closely related to that genus than any other genus in the world. And these are why things are always redefined, and sometimes why things just get a brand new family, because as things go on, it goes from there. So at the family level, you have a type genus. So, Cichla is that type genus. No matter what happens, Cichla will always be in the name Cichlidae. Now we go down to the genus. So we're stepping down a level. So family level. And genera do not have single specimens either as types. Instead, they have a type species. And what I mean by that is, so the Rio Grande cichlid, Herichthes. The genus that, the species that is the type species of Herichthes is Herichthes cyanogotatus, the Texas cichlid, Rio Grande cichlid, whatever. That means if the genus is ever split into smaller groups or new species are split from there, the one containing Cyanogotatus would always keep the name Herichthes. So even if the other Herichthes species got completely separated and they say these are new species, Herichthes cyanogotatus would always stay Herichthes cyanogotatus. So that keeps it fixes that genus name to a particular species, and that helps keep taxonomic names stable. So it's very interesting because it means that no matter what in the world, Herichthes is going to be tied to that species. It's kind of interesting because if you actually go in and look at your type species when you're learning fish, it can keep things a lot simpler if you know, oh, this is the type species for this genus. In that case, it will never change. Because I've talked about how a few times over the channel that names have been changed. That's if you know it's the type species, it won't. But now we go down to the species level, and this is where we're talking about the type specimen. So when you get a species, which is the bottom level unit of taxonomy, a species is defined by a physical specimen. So this is when something is physically representing the species, and that physical specimen is called the holotype. Now the holotype is, by its definition, is a single tangible example chosen by a scientist who first described the species. It is the official reference for that species name, the blueprint of what that name means. And everything must be based off that holotype. Now, there is something called a paratype. When we talked about numerous things in the past, we've talked about how some fish, depending on different regions, have different colorations, maybe a few different characteristics. Those would be called like paratypes. If the scientist is like, this is the holotype, this is what this fish is. But these are paratypes, meaning, oh, this is what it can look like if it got squashed, if it didn't eat well. Those would be your paratypes. They're supporting examples that show natural variation, but they have no name-bearing responsibilities. Excuse me. So that is the holotype and the paratype. And then there's something called a neotype. And a neotype is if the original type specimen is lost, because a lot of these are very, very old, because a type specimen cannot change per the rule book. Essentially, it can't just change willy-nilly. It has to sort of, it's pretty official. There's a lot of rules that go into it. But if the original type specimen is lost with fire or war or collection, because a lot of these were described in like 1800s, 1900s, scientists can designate a neotype, which is the new type specimen. So the essential thing that I want to break down is that every species, no matter how wide its distribution, is pointing to one very real, very preserved organism, usually in a museum, labeled and cataloged and protected. So when we're talking about a species, that species is named what it is because somewhere in a jar there's the type specimen, and it got its name because of this, and it got its name because of the taxonomist who did all the work. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Sorry this is coming out a day late and probably not as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as you are usually used to, but give me another couple of cups of coffee and we might be singing it too. But thank you guys so much again. Take care of yourselves. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones.